Thank you, Holly. Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Linda and I'm an alcoholic. Super good to be here. I'm always honored when I get asked to come back and especially speak on anything in our literature. Um, I want to thank those my peeps here that joined with me today. I don't normally tell anyone when I'm gonna go speak, and they always get mad at me, but I still never tell them. But one of the women that I sponsor, we are really like focused on communication with their higher power. And so it was just put on me to put the invitation out there, and I'm really glad that they did. And one of the things that, it's interesting that we're talking on step 11, and I've been almost daily talking with my sponsee about like relinquishing control in everything that we do. And it is so hard. Like, I can relinquish control on the big things, but the little things I still want to manage. And the truth is that my life just gets just as unmanageable on the little things as it does on the big things. So the sentence that I chose in step 11 in the 12 and 12 on page 104, they have increasingly found a peace of mind which can stand firm in the face of difficult circumstances. And I'm 24 years sober, and I'm not saying that I'm right. Sometimes I think I should maybe stand up for myself a little bit more, but I believe I just let my higher power, my God, fight my battles, that I take care of the things that my higher power puts in front of me. I go and be of service. I focus on the next indicated step. And God just fixes everything behind me, sometimes the way I want it to be fixed, and sometimes not. And what I really love is that last part of the sentence that says, stand firm in the face of difficult circumstances. And, I've had a magnificent teacher to teach me how to surrender my life to God. And I will tell you that I don't wish anyone to have a teacher like that, because it's incredibly difficult and incredibly painful. However, what this teacher has allowed is me to have a reliance on God that is just like instinctual. And I have been able to work with people and teach them that same level of simplicity. So when I first got sober, I was 30 days sober, and I have a son who suffers greatly. And my first real act of surrender was when I was 30 days sober. It was suggested to me to relinquish custody of my son to the courts. And I was like, wait a minute, like, I'm only 30 days sober, like, I can't do this. And my sponsor at the time would said to me, like, you can do anything if you work the program. And I was afraid. And I was afraid for all sorts of different reasons. But first and foremost, I was afraid that if I did the right thing, that meant I had to be responsible as a parent. And I didn't even know what that looked like. But I know that it's so much easier to allow my children to run wild than it is to be a good parent, because being a good parent means I have to be responsible, I have to show up, I have to be consistent, I have to do the things I say I'm going to do. I have to be kind, I have to be loving, I have to be fair. I don't want to be any of those things at 30 days sober. What I want to do is clock you upside your head, and you will do it my way because I am the parent, which makes me your God. And I can cut you off on a lot of things if you don't do it my way. Well, that doesn't get me very far with any of my children, and it certainly didn't get me very far with my teacher. So I did a lot of praying. And I'm going to give you specifics in this story so you can see how, like, my God showed up and told me exactly what I needed to do. So I decided that the next time my son was arrested, which was a weekly occurrence, he was 15, that I was no longer going to come and pick him up at juvenile hall. Now, I had fetched that child from juvenile hall at least 25 times up until that point. But this time I'm not going to do it. I've made that decision. So I get a call from an officer, and he says to me, "Your son is facing felony charges." And I was like, "What? Like, what are you talking about?" Like, up until then, my son's difficulties were just very juvenile. And he says, yes, he stole a baseball cap off a kid's head, and now he's facing felony charges. And I had to bite my tongue because what I wanted to do was laugh out loud, because I was like, really, God? Like, did you have to make it so incredibly clear to me? I mean, really? So I said, okay. And he said, so we're going to arrest him and take him to juvenile hall. And then I want you to come and pick him up at 4 p.m. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to pick him up this time. And the officer got very quiet on the other line. And he said, okay, I'll see if there's a bed for him, and hung up. Now, I had been advised by other people in the program that that interaction with that police officer was going to be a fight, that I would have to argue with him and say, I'm not coming to get my son. And he'd probably say, well, you'll have to pay child support. And all these arguments were going to happen. But nothing happened. Like, the doors just magically opened. And for me, it was very clear that this was the path that was necessary for my child. Like, he was going to die if I didn't do something different with him. And we went to court, which, if you've ever had to go to court with your kid, is incredibly painful. And then he went into a juvenile camp. Now, my second fear of that was that my son would hate me. And I had to be willing to accept that consequence in order to be a good parent. How many times we've had to punish our children, put them in the corner, send them to the room, send them back to the store that they stole the items from and admit that they stole, because we're good, responsible parents. And I'm sure nobody's child went skipping down to the store to say, oh, I stole this and I'm coming clean because I want my mom to love me. Our kids said all sorts of things like, I'm gonna hate you forever. And I stood a real possibility of that, because at the end of my son's sentence, that officers, his attorneys said to me, okay, well, we're gonna send your son home with you with probation. And I started to cry. And I said to my son's attorney, I said, please don't send him home with me. I'm too afraid. And that attorney got a shocked look on his face and turned around and walked away. And I had no idea what was going to happen. But then he came back to me and said, we're going to place your son in 9 months in a juvenile camp. And again, like, I knew that God had answered not only my prayers, but my son's prayers. And there was that stand firm in face of difficult circumstances. So in spite of all the consequences that could happen, that should have happened, that might have happened, I did the right thing, and I felt peace underneath all those other tumultuous feelings. And that was where I knew I was in God's grace. And that has held me firm. Now, I don't always follow it, but I try very hard to do that. And, you know, my son has gone on to burn his life to the ground. And, you know, sometimes he would call me from a street corner and he would say to me, Mom, I haven't eaten for 3 days. Can you feed me? And I would have to ask God for help, because, you know, I want to say yes every time. Like, I want to go pick him up from the street corner and put him in the house and give him a shower and tuck him in bed. But I know that's not the right thing to do. And so I would have to learn to pray and listen to hear the truth. And sometimes God would tell me, go feed him. And other times God would say, don't go feed him. And I never could figure out the rhyme or reason, but I listened to it. And that, you know, that has helped me so much. And, you know, because those life lessons are so powerful and so big, it really has spilled over into the rest of my life. Things didn't get better with my son. They got much, much, much worse. And because of that, I left California under duress. And I basically disappeared off the face of the earth. I left my 19-year corporate job. I sold my house. I sold all my stuff. And I just went to Alcoholics Anonymous overseas. And but, you know, when I was going to leave my job was another very powerful, you know, sign from my God. So I'm terrified. Now, if you're an alcoholic, like I'm an alcoholic, like we sit on the fence of, I don't know what decision I should make. Should I go left? Should I go right? Should I go left? Should I go right? And we just sit there on the middle of the fence. Should I go left and should I go right? And the next thing you know, we're obsessing. We're up at night. It's bothering our peace of mind. We're fighting with those people around us. Our sponsees are calling us and we're saying, oh my God, I'm not answering that phone call, because we're locked in that obsession. It's like the alien stuck on our face and we can't see it because it's so close. And the people that I sponsor, when they get like that, they call me and they're like, what do I do? And I say, just go be of service. Well, it can't be that easy. Well, it is. Sorry. I mean, it's really that simple. Stop thinking about the thing that's on your face, and the thing will die very quickly. And we can be of service in Alcoholics Anonymous and outside of Alcoholics Anonymous. Many times when I'm really off, I'll go to the supermarket and I just start collecting the baskets in the parking lot, putting them in the racks and lining them up properly. And the strangest thing happens because people in the parking lot get a little shocked. And then they start returning baskets into the corral. And by the time I leave, I'm so happy because I realized, like, dude, you got out of service, you helped others, and look at all these people who made a change. Like, that's a big deal. And I know that's not me. That's like my higher power's power just flowing out. I just let that thing die. So I'm in that obsession place. Do I do this? Do I not? I've been on my job for 19 years. I'm a high school dropout. I have no formal education. I've been on my job for a very long time. I make a lot of money, and I'm never going to be able to replace this, because I don't have the credentials to be able to replace it. And I'm afraid. And my daughter kind of pushes me a little, and I say, okay, I'm going to resign from my job October 31st. Now, I don't know why I picked that day. It was about 3 weeks from the day I was in. But, you know, when you're on the fence, you just got to do something to move left or right to get out of the obsession. So I did. I'm going to resign October 31st. And then I hung up with my daughter, and I feel sick. Like, I am so full of fear. And about an hour and a half later, my telephone rings. It's my boss. I answer the phone. I said, hey, how are you? What's going on? He said, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I want to do your review on October 31st. And I was like, oh, okay. And one more time, I'm like, God, do you have to make it so darn clear? Like, I kind of like this obsession place here. So I type up my resignation letter, and now I find a new obsession. Do I resign before or after the review? Before or after the review? And it's like, oh my God, just give it to God. Like, you don't have to figure all this out. And one of the biggest things that I have learned is, if I'm in today and my decision is to be made tomorrow, wait till tomorrow to make the decision, because I guarantee between today and tomorrow, God's going to make it ultimately clear. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't do our footwork, because I did footwork, but it means that we don't obsess. So I decided that it would be rude for me to accept a review from my boss and then quit. So I told him right in the beginning, but you know, as soon as I walked into his office, he knew something was up, because I had been with him for 19 years. But what happens when I'm in that God place, or higher power, or universe, whatever you want to call it, the signs are so clear that no matter how big my fear is, I know the direction to go in. And I knew. And my boss tried to talk me out of it. You know, my house, I put it on the market, it didn't sell. And I was like, oh, is that a sign from God? No, no, this is still the path you're supposed to go on. And eventually my house sold at the last minute and everything worked out. And you know, sometimes that's how God works. He just wants to push you right up to the cliff so that you just are out of solution, and then he kind of pushes you over and catches you. And that again is that stand firm in the face of difficult circumstances. And I remember at that time asking my sponsor, I'm like, you know, I'm 19 years sober and I'm leaving my corporate job. I'm selling my house. I just sold all my stuff. Like, I'm homeless. Really, I am. I'm homeless at 19 years sober. And my sponsors would say to me, like, God has a plan for you. And my sponsor was right. Like, I flew overseas, I visited a lot of countries, I went to a lot of AA meetings out there, and I didn't know anyone. And but again, I found peace and serenity, and I wasn't afraid. And you know, miraculous things happened to me. Like, I got on a bus and I was terrified to get on this bus because I might go the wrong way. And I'm on the bus and, you know, I went the wrong way. That's the truth. So I just got off the bus and then asked for help, and they helped me get back on the bus. Wow, what a solution. Like, to me, it has to be super complicated. And I get on the bus and this lady sits down next to me and she says to me, oh, I'm going to visit my grandchildren because my daughter's drinking and I don't know what to do. And like, I could just bawl my eyes out because I'm in the right place at the right time. And God says, I'm going to send my kid to you because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and not looking at the problem. I'll fix the problem. And, you know, it works. It works on big things. It works on small things. So this particular sponsee of mine, we were talking this morning about if my fiance is doing something that I don't approve of, do I bring it to his attention? And I said to her, well, most of the time, no. I said, most of the time, I'm not his teacher. It's not for me to say. God will take care of it. God will fight all my battles if I let him. My job is to be kind and loving to this man. Now, that doesn't mean that I let him, you know, treat me like a doormat. There are times we were in Costa Rica and he got upset and stormed off. And when I caught up to him, I lowered my glasses and I said very quietly, do not ever walk away from me and leave me like that, especially in a foreign country where I know nobody. That is a very unsafe thing to do. And then we went about our trip. Like, I didn't have to say anything more. I didn't have to beat him up. I said what I needed to say, and then we move on. And I go right back to be of service. What can I add to the stream of life? Because really, that's the truth. That sentence, the next paragraph goes on. We receive guidance for our lives to just about the extent that we stop making demands upon God to give it to us on order and on our terms. So I'm going to go back to my teacher again. And he's in a bad way. And well, at this time, he's 41 now, but at this time he was like maybe in his late 20s, early 30s. Now he's been either institutionalized or homeless since he was 15. So that's almost 15, 16 years. Like, I'm tired. I don't want to be your mom anymore. Like, I want you to either figure it out, go get help, leave me alone. Like, I don't want to do this. This is way too much drama for me. Now, I don't tell my son that. That's just how I feel. But Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me I better be honest about my feelings or I'm going to get lost. So my son latches on to a girl, and she starts messing with his mind. She starts moving things and really playing with his mental illness. And he starts calling me in the middle of the night, Mom, you got to get me out of here. Now, I don't get my son out of there. Like, I leave him in whatever situations he has chosen to place himself in. By the third phone call, I'm like, something's not right. Like, for 15 years, I have shown this child, I'm not going to help you when you're making bad decisions. I'm only going to help you when you're making good decisions. So the fact that he is asking me for help is telling me something's wrong. So I don't want to get like this. So I go be of service, Like, I know God's going to show me. And there was this lady at my meeting, and we decide we're just going to have lunch. Now, I don't know this lady, but every once in a while, I decide I'm going to work on my friendship character defect because I don't make friends very well. And I just find it difficult. So I make lunch plans with her, and my kid calls me again in the middle of the night, and he's running the streets, and he tries to get hit by a car, and he goes in the hospital, which all of this stuff is very normal for him. And I go to this lunch, and I'm thinking, I'm going to change my phone number. Like, I don't want to be on this merry-go-round anymore. And I sit down at lunch with this lady, and how are you doing? Yes, I'm fine. Thank you very much. I'm struggling with this with my son. And I tell her just a little bit, a minute or two. And she says to me, you know what I do for a living, don't you? And I was like, no, I have no idea. Like, I don't even know this lady. And she says, I'm a social worker for the mentally ill. And I was like, oh. And she said to me, your son's in danger. And if you don't help him, he's going to kill himself. And I was like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, all the signs are there. And I walked away from that lunch, and I was pissed off. And I was like, God, I don't want to get back in the mix with this kid. Like, I don't want to do this. It's too hard. It's just too much for me. But, you know, God continues to soften my heart that day. And by that night, when my son calls me again and says, you got to get me out of here, I go and I get him. Because I know at that moment, that was the right thing to do. And how did I know that? Because I received guidance for our lives. When we stop making demands, like my demand was just remove this problem. I don't want to deal with it anymore. I've been doing it for 15 years. It's not getting any better. Make it go away. And God was like, no, sorry. We're going to jump right into the frying pan. And so that's what I did. And, I will tell you that I couldn't have done that if I didn't have that power right in the center of my life, showing me what to do in big things and little things. Even as simple as I go in a store and I see something, I like that. And I hear my daughter's voice. You might like it, but you don't have any place to put it in your little tiny 300 square foot house anymore. So you don't get to have it. All right, God, no problem. Even though it comes through as my daughter's voice, I know God is telling me something. And then usually what happens is 20 minutes later, somebody is showing up to me that needs to be fed, that needs a jacket because it's snowing, that needs a new pair of shoes, and the money that I would have spent on that piece of furniture that I have nowhere to place, I now can take it with this person and buy them what they need for fun and for free, because God gave me the money. He didn't allow me to buy that furniture so that I could help his child. Because if I had bought the furniture when his child asked me for help, perhaps I would have been resentful. I don't have the money. Now I have to go without. But when I stay in God's will, I never feel like I go without. No, I do go without, but I don't feel like I do, because God always makes it right, always. And that has been my experience in everything. Ollie, I didn't see the 5 minutes. I forgot to set my alarm. I'm good. Okay. Who's doing the 5 minutes? You?
Nathan's going to do it. It's going to be so big, you can't miss it. Did she freeze on us?
Power, and then I picked up the hotspot on my phone, but obviously God decided I was done and he was going to open the meeting up. So Ali, does the whole meeting answer the questions, or do I?
No, you're the one. People just share or ask questions, and you answer the questions, please, as you are moved.
Okay, so Heather, I'm really sorry. I missed some of what you had to share, but I think what you were asking was, like, how do I turn over the little stuff? Okay, Ollie's giving me the thumbs up. So, it is learning. I think that you got it when you said, I was going to come to this meeting. I had 2 stars and then I decided, I better go. Some people might think coming to this meeting was little, and other people will think that it's big. It's that intuitive thought that we get that says, yeah, if you don't put the egg in the other hand, you're going to drop it. And then the egg drops. Like, if we learn to pay attention to that small, quiet voice, it will help us on the little things. But it's practice, practice, practice. And the other thing is that, sometimes it's my experience that God lets us make messes because we have to help other people. And if we don't have those experiences, then we can't help other people. So I'm really glad that you were here. Thanks for your question.
Great question. Thank you, Heather. KLM, come on up. Please unmute yourself. Gail, can you hear me?
Yes, I didn't have my hand up and you're calling on me, is that right?
That's it, yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'm Gail, I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Linda. What a powerful story you're telling around your child and who's not a child anymore. I think that that's such a common thread throughout most of our lives is struggling, trying to know how to help our child and how to let them go and trying to listen to what seems to be God's message to us and what to do and paying attention to the intuitive thoughts. I don't think it's always easy to do that, to say, okay, I'm turning this over, but usually, in my experience anyway, I wound up at a place where I don't know what to do. I know there's tools available. I've talked to people, I've talked to my sponsor, I've prayed about it, and I'm just so lost in what to do that it's kind of like it's another surrender. It's like, I give up, wave the white flag and help me. And at some point in that process, I'm able to do that. Just put it down for a little while. It's like you talked about getting that thing off your face. So it's like setting it down and trusting that I'll be shown at some point what the next right thing is. And I don't think you can really pinpoint that exactly, like do step A to B to C to D. But if you get in the general feel of that idea, that it's possible, that little bit by little bit, we can let go of our grip on a problem and trust that our higher power is going to come is already there and is just I'm going to be more in tune to it so that I'll be more open to a new idea, really, a new idea. So thank you very much for calling on me. It's always wonderful to be here every week. And thank you again, Linda. Wonderful share.
Thank you, Gail. Olivia G, coming up, please, if you can, start your
Oh,
video.
yes, I wanted to just thank you guys, and I don't want to go on video. Terrible. But this is new to me, and Linda is my sponsor, and so I'm learning about the steps, and of course I can't do this by myself. I need support, and of course it goes back to God. It was God that put me here. So he put me with Linda. I'm blessed with her and her husband, and the other classes that they offer. But I would love like more information on the book that you guys were reading from, and like other meetings as well.
I'm sorry, Olivia, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Hey, Olivia. So we're reading, what I read was out of the 12 steps and 12 traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll be happy to give you a list of both in-person and Zoom meetings. We can talk about that after the meeting. I got kicked off, so if you had other pieces to your question, I did not get it.
Did you want to try again, Olivia? Okay, Olivia, just message me if you want to ask your question later. Thank you. Okay, wonderful. Lindsay, come on up. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, Lindsay Alcoholic. I just want to say thank you so much, Linda, for sharing in such detail, specifics, how your God works in your life. And Linda's also my sponsor. She's pretty much a badass. I have learned a lot from Linda, and I'm just so grateful every time I get to learn more. You know, she says the student shows up and then the teacher appears. So it's right where I'm at. I've had a recent experience where I have learned that it is vital to my recovery to continue to try to grow along these spiritual principles. And I feel raw and exposed currently because I feel like I'm at a place where I recently took a drink and it scared the shit out of me. But I realized there was a lot that I had walked away from in taking back my will, and began to step away from the rooms and being of service and making my own decisions, which is what got me to AA in the first place. And so I have this real desire to do different. But you said some things, Linda, about, prayer and meditation to do the next right thing. And I don't always know what is okay to trust. So right now I'm checking in with my sponsor a lot, other alcoholics, and it's working. It's working because I feel like there's a lot of fear of the unknown right now, because I'm realizing I don't know what I need to do a lot of the times, and I need help. I'm of the extreme all or nothing case. I'm a crazy alcoholic. But Linda, how long did it take you before you felt like you could trust that God consciousness to do the next right thing, that you knew it was God telling you to do the right thing, what the right thing was? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but sometimes I think that we complicate what's the next right thing. So the next right thing is get my butt out of bed, get on my knees and pray. The next right thing is go in the kitchen and make a cup of coffee and have my breakfast and make my lunch. The next right thing is my phone rings and it's my sponsee. Gosh, it's 6:30 in the morning. Answer the phone. That's the next right thing.
Thanks, Linda.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lindsay. It was wonderful. Lana, come on up.
Hi, everyone. Lana, alcoholic. Grateful to be here. Linda, great share, and I identified a lot with everything you shared. Our son has been in trouble with the law from the age of 19, and he just came home from doing 14 months in prison. He's now 26. And so I identified a lot with your story, with just, the relationship with your son and having to depend a lot on God on how to navigate. What I wanted to ask you was, how is your son doing now? And how are you doing with that relationship with your son, with God in the middle, with this triangle? Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Lana. Thank you for that. I'm sorry about your son. He's still very young. I'll say some prayers for you and your family. So my son is still in California. I'm in Colorado. He does not know where I'm at. He is facing a 5-year prison sentence. I'm incredibly grateful. And I did not speak to him for almost 1.5 years. And I just recently started talking to him again. And I can tell, like, there's just a surrender about him. Like he's talking about, I want to do things differently. And I don't know what that means for him. I know that I'm not going to give him my address. I'm not going to tell him where I'm at. And I'm just going to be, very cautious. Like if you can spend 5 years on the outside and be sober, then maybe you could have my address. And really God placed that because I can no longer be encouraging for my son. Like I don't have the capacity any longer. I do not believe that he can get better. And so it was best for me to step away from that relationship. Otherwise, I was going to place my feelings at his doorstep that he didn't deserve. Like he deserves for people to believe in him. I can't anymore. So I let the people of AA or the people in his prison or other people who have the capacity to show up for him.
Beautiful. that
Thank you,
was good.
Lana.
Great, great question. Darcy, grateful, come on up.
I'm Dorsey. I'm an alcoholic. I didn't have my hand up, but I'd be glad to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I can't see where your face is now. I just had cataract surgery. But is she still here? Yeah. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for sharing. You really spoke to my heart. I wrote you a little bit about it. And I can't relate to the exact things with the child. I'm a single mother. My daughter's 36 and lives in California. I'm in South Carolina. I'm from New Jersey. But there's a lot of other different dynamics that are difficult ever since I became sober. And that was in 2006. So it's been a while. And, you know, I just have had to always let go and let God, because no matter what I try to do in my own power, doesn't do a thing. But when I let go and let God, like the step 3, you know, when you say turn your will and your life over to the, you know, the will to God, that means everything. That means everything. It's like, to me, it's every day is a new surrender to God, to my God, and to AA, you know, the steps in AA and the other individuals in AA that have been my my little section of lists of people I can count on, you know, that I can call no matter what. And when I go to California, most of my friends are in the East Coast. When I go to visit, I get people that I can call when I get back to my hotel, so that if my daughter says something that's just, and she's sober, but, you know, can say things that are just so cutting and so cruel, that I have to talk to somebody, you know, when I get back at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. And I always have those women or men, but usually my sponsor. And thank God she's a night owl, so I can call her up through, you know, 1 o'clock. And there's another woman on here I called the other night at 3 and she woke up. So I was grateful for that. And that wasn't for that. It was for, you know, after my surgery, it was a physical thing. But, you know, AA people have been there, sisters especially, have been there for me since the get-go. I was surrounded by people. It was so obnoxious because I'm not really a woman's, you know, person. When I heard someone told me to go to a women's meeting, I said, forget that. So I went to the noon meeting, and that was co-ed. We call it co-ed in my age group. But anyway, you know, people surrounded me with love, and some of the people I knew in town. And that's been the same way since I started in AA. That no matter what I'm going through, if I get to my AA meeting or get to talk to people, it gets me up and out of whatever I'm going through. And I think, oh my God, and I thought I was having difficulties. You know, I complained about my feet or my ankles about something. And then I watch someone that I know and love and talk to that doesn't have any legs. You know, he'd been in Afghanistan. You know, so, you know, God puts things in perspective really rapidly for me. You know, I complained about my cataract surgery recently. The left eye isn't behaving the way it's supposed to, and it will take time, the doctor said. And I'm thinking, what do you mean it takes time? I need to see. That was my good eye. And then I talked to a girl at the gym that has no eyesight. She's 20 years younger than I. Was a marathon runner, and she has just tiny peripheral. She has some kind of genetic disease. And he put me right behind her, talking to her about complaining about my cataract surgery coming up. And she said, well, you have a chance to see. And I thought, oh my goodness. So, you know, God does that every day now that I'm getting older and going through physical things, which I never had gone through. I was always like, you know, everything was just. So thank you again. You know, to me, it's the constant surrender and just letting go. So thank you again. Thank you for the group.
Thank you, Darcy.
Beautiful share, Darcy. Thank you. Michelle, come on up.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I'm an alcoholic, and thank you, Linda. You brought up a lot of memories for me that I had my husband and I have 3 sons, and our middle son was our a challenge. And my husband was sitting at the computer one day, and he turned to me and he said, "Ben's gonna die out there." And there was a peace and calmness over me that I can't even explain. And it was no more than 2 weeks later, my son came to me and asked for help. And I just gave it to God. And he said he had to go to rehab. And I said, "Why do you have to go to rehab?" And he said, because he had stolen some Advil and stuff at the grocery store, some stupid thing they were selling, I guess, to get more drugs. And because the cop told me, and I said, "Well, I'm not using my insurance for you to go to rehab." And I walked out of the room, and my husband sat there with his mouth open, and I let him stew with it. I called my husband out of the room too, because he didn't understand where it was coming from. My husband was not an alcoholic. And about half an hour later, Ben came and he said, "Mom, I need help." And I said, "Why do you think you need help?" And he proceeded to explain. And I said, "So what's rehab going to do for you?" And he told me what he thought. And at that point, the decision was made that I would use my insurance for him to go to rehab. And I'm thank you for sharing these personal stories, because they're important. And my son was sober for about 2.5, 3 years, and then he decided to move to Arizona, and everything went to hell in a handbasket. And he came back, and he was out there for a while and got in trouble. Well, he totaled his car basically, and he called me, and I said, "I'll pick you up, and I'll take you to a meeting. You go to a meeting tonight. I'll introduce you to guys, and you get rides every night to a meeting." And that's exactly what he did. And he's still sober, and that's 9 years ago.
Wow.
And it's all that intuitive God thing inside of me that knew I'm not going to co-sign anybody's BS anymore. That was the old Michelle. And then I had a brother and a brother-in-law in a similar situation, and I was told to fix them. I said, "I can't fix them. Only God can fix them. And I'll give you a ride. I'll take you. I'll introduce you to guys, but then you're on your own." And fortunately, those 2 guys are still sober today too. But it doesn't always work out that way, does it? But when you said about the little things is the question I have the biggest problem. My husband passed away December 1st, very suddenly. My husband of 50 years. And I'm handling that every day. Every day I just get up and I ask God to get in my head before I do. And I just pray, and I talk to God. Sometimes I yell at my husband for dying on me, but it's all normal things, I think, for a new widow. But it's those little things that get me. They got me even when I was drinking too. The whole world could be crashing down around me. I didn't give a care about any of that. But God forbid I should drop the sugar bowl, and all hell broke loose, and I'm smashing things in the kitchen. So those little things still for me are more difficult. And the only thing I can, when you were talking about going left or right, I used to pull out my driveway. They built a new mall, and I didn't know whether to go left or right because we moved. And I called my sponsor. She said, "Well, if you think to go left, go right." And she was right, because every time I would think that, she was right. I was always thinking wrong in the beginning, but those little things, I guess I don't really have a question, but I really do appreciate you bringing up some of that personal stuff, because it brought back these memories that I'm sober 48 years by the grace of God. And only the grace of God has given me this ability just to do these kind of things. The old Michelle would never be of service to anybody, was selfish, self-centered to the extreme. So I appreciate you, Linda. And I'll keep your son in my prayers too. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. Calvin, come on up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Calvin, and I'm an alcoholic. And I Linda, and when I seen your name on the flyer today, I was thinking, I don't know. And then when I seen you, I said, I've seen you 2 times and I've heard your story. And I heard your story the 3rd time tonight. And every time I heard you, Linda, it's a different story and it's a powerful story. And what I heard tonight was, and every time you talk, you are an honest woman. And I'm the same way. I'm transparent. I open up my soul because it keeps me humble. It keeps me in the right space when I let you know who I really am. See, because the fake Calvin wants to be something that he's not. But I know if I'm gonna stay in the grace of God, like you talked about tonight, that I gotta stay transparent. And I have no problem with that tonight, because whatever I had done in the past, I've dealt with one way or another. And where I move at forward, I don't do the exact things I would have did a long time. So the things that I do today, I don't mind sharing them with you, or the things I've done before, they are part of my story. And my God, that's what you've done tonight. You know, and I'm Landa's husband, and that was our kid. And we went through natural hell, but you know what happened? It cracked my heart open. It really cracked my heart open. And I need my heart cracked open every now and then. Yeah. You know, so, and I heard your heart being cracked open. Yeah. And I know when we start talking heart to heart, and that's what you brought tonight to us, everybody is helped. We talked about that today in the meeting. Language of the heart. We don't talk to each other's head, but with intellect. We talk to each other's heart. And you did a great job of that tonight, Linda. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Calvin.
Thank you, Calvin. Patrice O, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Patrice, and I am a grateful recovered alcoholic. Linda, thank you so much for your share. Actually, I didn't even know anything about this meeting, and a friend of mine sent me a text and said, hey, I'm on this meeting. And when I got on, it was so spot on, because I'm going through some difficulties with my son, who is 23. He'll be 24 in August. And unfortunately, I have 4 children, and unfortunately, I was in oblivion their entire childhood and didn't even know what was going on. And it turns out that he has an untreated mental illness, which now has been coupled with an addiction. And he's like very delusional, doesn't think he has a problem. And I just heard you say, I came in about 10 minutes late, but later in your story, you mentioned about mental health. And I was wondering if you discovered his issues with mental health early on, or was it later when he was an adult? And like, how were you able to get him to get help?
Yeah, thank you, Patrice. I'm sorry, that's very difficult. My son was diagnosed with schizophrenia at 6. So, which is incredibly young. And then he started attempting suicide at 20, and he's had now 10 suicide attempts. I'm gonna suggest a book for you.
Okay.
It's called I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help.
Okay.
And that book changed how I communicate with my son. And also, if you've never heard of NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, a wonderful place to go for support and resources.
Oh, beautiful. I've never heard of it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
you're very welcome. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome. And what the title of that book is exactly what he told me on yesterday.
Yes.
That he's not sick, nothing is wrong. So thank you so much. We appreciate
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Patrice. We've come to the end of our thing here that we've done very well. Linda, is there anything that you'd like to leave us with in closing?
I'm just super grateful to be here. I thought everyone's shares were wonderful. I'm just super honored that I was invited and I got to participate, and thank you. I like when I get to hear other people also. So thank you very much.